Hello, how you doing? And a very warm welcome back to youtube.com/Wi-Fi sheep with me, Tom. And this, a new video in our continuing series, Going GUI. If you're not sure what we're up to, I am exhibiting at this year's Retro Computer Festival in Cambridge, England. At the moment, it's just the beginning of October 2024. The show itself is on November the 9th and 10th, 2024. So at time of recording, I have about 4 weeks to try and get myself organised. And I'll be completely honest with you, there is a small element of panic setting in. Before we go any further, just a quick look here at the Centre for Computing History, Cambridge, England's website. Details are on screen and in the description to the video for the Retro Computer Festival 2024. I have stressed this for the past 2 months now. This event is going to be oversubscribed. If you want to come along, and we would so dearly love to see you, you must pre-book tickets, as admission on the door cannot be guaranteed. It's for both Saturday and Sunday. That's the 9th and 10th of November 2024. And this is the page as I'm recording right now. It's had a recent update, and just look at all the exhibitors. I've never known so many exhibitors. I don't know where we're all going to fit in all honesty, but there I am, Tom Emerson, Wi-Fi Sheep, Going GUI. The conclusion to this series you're watching now will be live at the show. It would be great to see you. I know many of you have already reached out to me and said, I'm going to come along, Tom, and that's fantastic. It would be great to see you. In today's video, we're going to look at PC x86 architecture, something we've not done too much here on the channel, and previously in this series we focused on 6502 BBC Micro, we focused again 6502 derivative, Commodore 64, we've looked at the 8-bit operating systems. This will be our first 16-bit operating system and the first look at retro or vintage PC systems. Now, I've been really excited and wanting to show you this for some time, and it's just been sort of getting pushed further and further back, so I've had this machine kind of in the wings here in the studio workshop for some time now, and I just haven't got round to showing it to you properly until today. So take a look at this. So I've set up an additional camera free so I can show you this mini PC. This is originally I thought it was DigiPOS, but it's actually pronounced DigiPOS commercial retail kiosk computer. It is x86 architecture, and it's running, I believe it's coming with a clean install of MS-DOS 6, but that's all it's got on it. And the machine's manufacture date is, I believe, around 1998, so late 1990s. But the machine is extremely interesting, and I got it very, very cheap. Basically, these units were not for domestic use. They were used for basically running things like checkouts and till kiosks, that kind of thing, in supermarkets and shops. I actually bought it offline with a company that was specialising in the disposal of shop fixings. And obviously they had quite a few interesting and relatively unique, but also quite cheap IT systems. This seemed quite a good little unit to go for because of its relatively small size and compact nature for a machine of this era. What's interesting about it is, despite being quite a late 90s machine, you think about late 90s, we had the beginning of USB and sort of the standardised media card formats and all that kind of stuff. Because this was used in a commercial/industrial environment, if I turn it around, I'll show you the back. It's actually purely set up with parallel and COM serial ports. It's also, and this threw me a little bit, it has IBM PS2 for the mouse, but the keyboard input here is actually the old IBM AT standard, and that actually threw me for a loop, because I'll be honest with you, I didn't grow up with PC as a youngster. So we had Mac at home, which was a different system. It was Apple serial bus. So I just didn't grow up with the PCs. The PCs we eventually had at school kind of ran alongside the BBC Micros, and obviously we weren't allowed to, fiddle with the machines or change anything or take stuff out or anything like that. So I just didn't have the exposure. So when I saw this particular connector here, I just thought, what on earth is that? Had to look it up, and luckily you could still get adapters, so I bought one. This is an AT to PS2 adapter, and that goes in there, and that now gives us PS2 keyboard and mouse. I also have one of the generic green USB to PS2 connectors. So we may just for today run with a USB keyboard that I know has the PS2 driver. This, all it is, it's a three-way wires. There's no chip or converter or anything in there. So your keyboard has to have the PS2 drivers for this to work. It does mean, because it was never used as a domestic PC, it does mean that there's no sound card fitted. So it only has, as far as I'm aware, PC buzzer on board. You could possibly put an ad-lib or Sound Blaster card in. I believe this is standard PCI connectors inside. So that might be something we do at a later date. I certainly won't be having that ready for the show, but I do want to try and get this machine ready. It's actually not too heavy. It's very well built, as you might imagine, for an industrial commercial machine. So it's a plastic bezeled front and a metal case inside. This one did come with the door. The door hinges, like most things in this era, are completely broken. Inside we've got a rather odd green push power button, and we do have a floppy drive. What I will say about that is, and I don't know if this is going to show up on the camera, if I just bring the machine a little bit nearer the camera, you can see that for some reason, when this machine was decommissioned, somebody literally tried to wrench this drive out the front of the machine. So all the bezel around the actual floppy drive is all cracked or completely missing, and there's cracks in the front case going off here, cracks going off here. On the back I noticed, again I'll just turn the machine back round, it looks like it was literally wrenched out from where it was because pin damage. One of the connectors got pins bent. I could well imagine when these machines were taken out of service, they were literally just, people just yanked the cables out and they were literally just ripped out from the kiosks they were in with very little care. So it's actually remarkable this machine still works and is actually not in too bad nick from what it is. Now, behind the scenes, I have been collecting a few kind of relevant or free going in the bin PC bits, kind of to try and sort of complement this main project. As I said, I went with this Digi POS machine because it was going relatively cheap. It was about £30, including carriage, which works out at around $45 US. So it was a very, very good buy. It is a relatively modern machine, and the architecture is also very interesting in it because it's not Intel and it's not AMD, but it is compatible x86, and we'll have a look at that in a moment. However, I've also been, as I said, trying to collect some things. Now, what I really wanted was the brand of PC school computer that we eventually got at the end of my primary school era. So this was kind of age, I think from age about 10 and 11. So as I mentioned to regulars on the channel, I grew up in school with the BBC Micro. By the end of the 90s, we actually started getting some Windows 3.1 Wintel PCs in. And they're actually a British clone brand. So it's an IBM compatible, but it's British brand called Opus. I believe it's Opus, O-P-U-S, Opus Technologies. Now, I've been desperately trying to find the particular machine that we had, and the only source I can find, or picture of one, comes off the, I think it's the TV and Film Props website. So that's the image you can see now. Those are the machines that I had by the end of, well, we had at school at the end of primary. And then when I switched schools to go to secondary, which is like upper year, from 11 till 16 at that time, we also still had these machines. And I think at that point they were upgraded from 3.1 to Windows 95. Don't get me wrong, they were terrible computers, but they're just, it's a nostalgia. So it would have been nice as part of my personal computing story to have been able to preserve one of those. But I cannot find any trace of that particular mid to late 90s computers at all. I can find earlier ones, but not that particular model. So instead of that, I have been trying to source some Opus branded parts or paper materials, that supporting materials, that kind of thing. And this is what I have actually managed to find. Again, very cheap off eBay because no one actually wanted them. I actually found this box, again with the very distinctive blue Opus. I think it is Opus. It's not Opus, is it? Is it Opus? I'm going to say Opus, but correct me if I'm wrong. Opus Technology sort of user box for a slightly earlier system, and inside it has got some documentation. This is 1991, so and there is actually a disc a disc in there which I don't think you can see the print on, but it's utilities and drivers disc 1 of 2, and I've only got 1 disc, so but it's not for a machine I actually have, but there is actually a manual in here. Interestingly, these manuals actually talk about GEM, so I think they were using GEM as the preferred operating system at this time over Windows, and something called a Panther system, which was an... Did we have any of those? They look vaguely familiar. We may have had some of these at secondary. And just by luck, when I was searching around, and this came the other day, actually I'll leave that on there, I found these. Paid a little bit for these, and might not be worth it if they don't work, but a full set of not only Windows 3.1 install discs, but Opus Technology branded Windows 3.1 install discs on high capacity 1 point, how big was a high capacity floppy? 1.2, 1.3 megabytes, something like that, in FAT DOS format. And there is the complete set. So I actually would like to see if these discs, if they actually work. We can dir or dir them in DOS to see if they work. And if they do work, is the version of Windows, because these are basically the British, but they come from a British company, so Opus that is, are these specific for the Opus Technology PCs, or is it just a stock version of Windows 3.1? Would it actually be fine, and would it install on this? If it would, and we actually did a proper disk install of Windows, that'd be quite retro. And I do need to get Windows 3.1 running on here. Now, this machine from 98, I think, was designed for Windows 95, NT, possibly Windows 98. I think it will run 3.1. It's a little bit early for this particular hardware, but I think it will run okay. And it's 3.1 I would like to run for pure nostalgia reasons. Okay, so what's the plan? Well, first thing to do is we'll take the machine apart. We'll take a look inside. I've got to think about what we're going to do cosmetically, because this front damage is a problem. Especially if you're taking a computer for show. They don't have to look minty fresh, but I think having cracks and, you know, signs of abuse is not great. So I was thinking, what could we do to fix that? Then literally the other month, the same seller I bought this from, bearing in mind I've had this in store for a little while now, the same seller, this disposal company for retail infrastructure, if you like, or shop fixings, put another listing online, and it was for this. Yes, there is sort of two, but this one is just a shell. And when they bought this, they had several of these going. I only bought the one. You couldn't really tell. They just had a generic picture of one unit, so they wouldn't give you much detail about the actual state of what you were buying, which is a little bit annoying. But then they relisted these, which are just empty. I'll show you. They're just literally empty cases. So I wonder if they didn't ship them all, and they've literally stripped the innards out, scrapped the innards, which is a shame, but okay, and then flogged the cases. These cases were really cheap, about £12 including carriage, so what, less than $20 US. So all in all, you know, I've spent, what have I spent now, £42 for a full computer and a case. So what I'm thinking of doing, instead of trying to rebuild and repair this, I might try and make one good case out of these two. You might notice a few subtle differences. So we've got one of the distinctive key lock things. I don't have the key for it. I don't know if this board supports it. There is a couple of minor differences between the two, but they should be fully compatible with each other. They're virtually identical. And it will allow us to make at least one good machine. So I'm basically thinking it would be a simple case of just swapping the cases over. This has got a few marks on it which we'll need to clean up. I'll show you on the other camera. So yeah, we've got a few marks and things that needs sorting out. It's actually not in too bad nick, so it might be a simple case, or we'll just take this one apart and we'll put it in this case. So to do that, let's just take that out the back. There's two sort of thumb screws. I say thumb screws, I'm going to need a flathead screwdriver for that. So taking it apart, these two, I say thumb screws, but I'm going to need a flathead screwdriver. There we are, just to take the tension off. Again, they're sort of utility, semi-industrial units, so for commercial retail, so they need to be easy to maintain, which is why I don't understand why they would. Well, I do understand why they were literally ripped out to bits, but it doesn't take 5 seconds to slide the actual innards of the machine out. There we go. And this is inside. It's a very, very compact design, which is why I really do like it. So this is the sort of modem card that, to be honest with you, we don't really need. It doesn't do anything that's useful to us, really. I'm going to leave it in. We've got a hard drive here, which I think is... I've actually got some extra connectivity as well. What's the hard drive? Can I see what the size of it is? Seagate. I can't read upside down. Hang on. Let's have a look. 4.3 gigabytes. It's there. Okay. So 4.3 gigabytes. We've got basically the power supply is here. It's actually looking relatively clean inside. I'm not too worried about that. It's a little bit of dust, but it's not terrible. And then underneath is the main system itself, the main motherboard. So we've got 2 sticks of 32 megabytes of RAM, and we talked about the chip architecture. Chips hiding under here under the heatsink. As I said, it's an ICL. I think it might be an ICL part. It's not. It is an x86 Intel clone chip, if you like, but it's not. It's not an Intel and it's not an AMD part. So it's slightly different architecture. And then we've got the. I think these are just stock PCI slots here, of which cards can actually go in, and then that modem card you can see is slotting in there. So if I could get a compatible sound card, it wouldn't be out of the question to actually fit a sound card in this. One thing that was noted is there is no battery. The battery is time is kept on chip. One of these chips is the clock and has a sort of battery in it. That battery is dead, long dead. However, I don't believe it leaks. I'm going to eat those words probably, but at the moment I don't believe it leaks. So, but it also means it's very difficult to, virtually impossible to replace, as far as I'm aware. Might need to look into that. So, yeah. Basically, I don't know an awful lot about this machine, but I'm learning as we go along, and I just love the kind of the compact nature of it, and it just makes it for a nice small exhibition unit that we can take out to show, and also can run some retro PC as I remember from the 1990s. Okay, so hopefully this should be a very simple case swap that we should be able to just put our PC. We need to turn it. Okay, it's just confusing. The motherboard is underneath the machine, so we need to turn it around. There we go. And then hopefully we can just put the new slightly better nick case. I say slightly better. It's got scratches and stuff, but it's not horrendous. I think it'll clean up. Let's just see if we can, if I've got enough space. And basically there's some runners. You can just see here there's some runners inside. So it's just a case of lining the case back up with the runners. There we go. Okay. Let's see if this wants to play nice and actually get fit back in or not. There we go. That seemed all right. Look how we're doing on the front. Yep, so the floppy drive is lined back up. The door, this one didn't come with a door. The door, by the way, is broken. I'm probably not going to do much with that. It does sort of clip in there. And apart from a few marks and things we'll just need to clean up, that's actually looking all right. So just put our case fixings back in. there's a few marks here, so possibly the metal work on the other one was in slightly better nick. Really, if I had a little bit more time, and I may still do this, I would actually probably take this metal piece and change the front bezel to swap them again between the two, because this one is possibly in slightly better nick, but it's okay for what we need. It'll probably clean up all right. There's a few scratches, a few marks, but the main thing is, the thing people are going to look at is this front bezel, and this front bezel in this machine is in much better nick. Plus the lock is interesting. I remember PCs which had like a key lock on the front, which seemed absurd at the time. Oh, by the way, this panel here does pop out and would allow for a slim optical drive to be fitted at the expense of the full height or full length PCI card. So you can't have sort of both in the same slot because they hit. Now, I don't have the compatible drive to go in there. If we had an optical drive, that would make life a lot easier, because this is not a USB machine. So the only way we've got data input and output, I haven't even got a network card. The only way we can do data and output is at the moment through the floppy drive. So that's going to make life a little bit interesting. Right, so I've been having to think about cleaning. I think what we can probably try is some just generic multi-surface wipes, which are just like baby wipes, but you wouldn't want to use them on a baby. Just to see if we can just clean the machine up a little bit. So there's just like a residue of a sticker here. Plastics are actually cleaning up quite nice, so I'm not too worried. I said I might be able to do a bit of work or swap some other parts around just to get the machine looking better, but that's, yeah, it's beginning, the grime and stuff's beginning to shift. This here, which I thought might be a problem, there's just some sticker adhesive, which obviously these machines would have had all sorts of safety stickers and ownership labels, and basically, as you know, any PC, if you use PCs in an office environment or commercial environment, you know, they're usually covered in sort of labels and stickers from IT departments or your contractor or whoever it is you've got. So, and obviously those identity marks have to be stripped off the machines, because when the asset gets disposed of, the company wants nothing more to do with it or doesn't want to be associated with it. So stuff that doesn't, even when they go to landfill, I was going to say stuff that goes in the bin doesn't, but that's a lie, it does. Right, so I've got a sort of residue of a sticker here, which obviously this isn't going to clean. There's also some scratches and marks still in the case, but it'll be alright. As I said, I do think I'll change this top case because it is quite scratched up. But what I want to see if I can do is just lift that adhesive. And I've got a little bit of surgical spirit. I need to be careful here because this can potentially lift the paint. This is a painted metal top, so we do need to be just a little bit careful how we do this. So let's do that. And cotton buds, or Q-tips as you call them in the States. And I'm just going to put a bit of surgical spirit. So I have stripped paint off model railway items with this stuff, so we do need to be a little bit careful what we're doing. And yeah, that is now lifting. So it's perfect, but it's better than it was, and that's just taken that adhesive label mark off, and yeah, it's cleaned up all right. But as I keep saying, I think I would probably, and I might still do it before the show, but I'll do it off camera, I might swap this metal part over for the better one on the other unit, and we'll just use the front bezel off this. But either way, it's looking a lot better than it was. Okay, so the next big question is, does it actually work? And I can say yes, it does, but let's wire it all back up and do another test. Now it's in its new case, just to make sure that I haven't broken anything inadvertently. I've got just off, well, I say off camera, but I can actually show you it. So just here, I actually have a 4.3 monitor. This might be the monitor we run with actually. One of these sort of cheap 20-year-old generic PC monitors from the time. Yes, the CRT would have been nice, but flat screens are more practical. And it's just a standard VGA type lead that you can see here. So let's put the VGA in. VGA is that one there, which looks suspiciously like a COM port and isn't. So VGA in there. AT connector back in there. And also, not forgetting, we'll need a kettle lead for power, so let's pop that in. Interesting, it does actually have the ability to take a monitor power through, so we could power the monitor through the power supply. Well, I say through the power supply, it just carries the mains voltage back through the supply, so saves needing two plugs basically. Okay, so I did actually pick up a Packard Bell keyboard, which was in the freebie bin at Retro Festival 2 years ago. I don't know if we're going to have a freebie bin this year, but they did 2 years ago. And I picked this up because it was PS2 compatible, and it was beige, and it looked the part, and would have gone with this, or will go with this machine. However, I didn't notice that there seems to have something spilt on it, and these keys over here are completely locked. In fact, that one, you see, is locked. Eric is locked down, which might be the reason why it was dumped in the freebie bin when it was, because it's damaged. Kind of need to see if we can get this up and running. That's another project in another video. I say for another day. I'm running out of time, but we do need to see if we can get that in better nick. If I can't, I do have other PS2 keyboards, or worst case scenario, because that's quite a big keyboard, my little cheap generics that I use do have PS2 capability, so we can pop that on there, and they are USB, but we can use the adapter and that will work. I won't do a mouse at the moment because we don't have an operating system that can actually run it, so we'll power on and let's see what happens. Again, apologies, this is a slightly strange angle. There we go, might be a little bit better. Let's see if anyone's at home before we boot up. Oh, so far so good. That screen is extremely dark. Brightness is all the way, I don't know why brightness is all the way, there we go. So 65536, okay. CMOS battery error, well, we knew about that anyway. Press F1 key to continue. So that's the BIOS. Yeah, IDT WinChip C6. I knew it was something like that. So again, slightly different architecture. And there we go, there is C drive, and if we just do a dir, basically there's not an awful lot on this system. So the Win A20 386. So is this a 386 machine? I'm not sure. I must admit my knowledge in this area is a little bit sketchy at best, but I do know we have, I think it's DOS 6. I think we can I go Q Basic? Does that work? Yes, it does. So you do actually have a version of Microsoft Basic or Q Basic installed as part of the standard DOS installation. If I had known that our PCs when I was at school in the 90s did this, that would have changed everything, because I was doing all my basic programming in BBC Basic on the BBC Micros, which you could argue was perhaps a better environment to use. I don't know, but had I known that our PCs did this, that would have changed everything. I only found this out recently, so yeah, a little bit annoyed about that. But overall the machine is running, and you can hear the fan noise, and the reason I'm keeping the original hard drive in is just because it makes hard drive sounds. But what I do need to know is, will it run Windows 3.1, and how well will that work? So let's just exit out of that. I think to do the test to see how well it will run with earlier 16-bit software, I've actually got this on this, which is Sierra's HeliSim. Now we actually used this when I was doing the BBC Micro 512 compatibility mode test. That was using a Raspberry Pi emulator to allow a BBC Master System to run as it would have done if it was a 512 model and be able to execute some x86 programs and applications. It had a DOS compatibility mode, and we actually used HeliSim on this particular disk to try out. Now this disk is double density, it's a 700K double density disk. So let's just pop this in. Now I will at some point do a proper capture, but for now we'll just run from my third camera, so you can sort of pointing at the screen, and hopefully it'll stay in focus because it's a little blurry, but okay. So let's just try A drive. Okay, and directory. Okay, that's looking good. So it's seeing it on the directory. So if we now go, I'm trying to remember my DOS commands. CD heli sim. Oh, CD Mr. H. Heli sim. Directory again. Okay, and we want the exe. So I should be able to just call heli. You can hear the disk. Okay, it's a bit flickery. That's more flickery than you're seeing. It does work, and it's running in VGA mode. So I should be able to, if I escape mode, put it in demo, it is very flickery. But it's actually running relatively well, actually. So if it can run this program, by the way, would run on the original 8086 or 286 machines as well. We ran it in 286 mode on the BBC Micro. I have tried it when we did running IBM DOS and PC stuff on an ESP32. That was the FabGL libraries that we did on another video a while ago, and we tried it on that, and it ran very slow because it was that was emulating the original. It's the 8080 or 8086 chipset, I forget. It's the first one that became the PC standard, and that ran very slow. Of course, it was all running on both those systems in CGA mode, and we've got it here running very nicely in VGA color. It's much more flickery on what I'm seeing than you're seeing because of the frame rate difference between the capture and camera. But you can see some flicker, which that flicker is actually there in person. So it's not perfect, but it runs. And the point of showing you this and saying it runs is basically if it can run this 16-bit piece of software perfectly fine and supports the full VGA mode, then it should be able to run Windows 3.1, which is what I want to do. So maybe we should try that next, he says, maybe. Okay, so we know that was valid, which is great. So we'll take that disk out. I guess I haven't tested these, and I stress we don't actually need Windows install disks to install Windows, as mad as that sounds. But just for now, let's just go through these disks one at a time and make sure they look, at least they look valid. That's disk 1. Let's put disk 1 in. And then let's just do dir, see if the disk's valid. Okay, that's looking good. I'm just going to do this now with the other disks, which I'll do off camera because it is very boring. And if they all look valid, we'll try and go for an install. Okay, so I've just done a simple dir check on all the disks, and they seem to read, and they read back as the directories that I'd expect. So it's looking promising. Believe it or not, I've never actually done a proper Windows install from floppy disk before. I've done it in an emulator environment with disk images, and I have loaded software, mainly on the Mac actually, back in the 90s and early 2000s, off original floppy disk. Never done a Windows install, so this is going to be interesting because I want to see if these Opus Technology disks are actually going to install. Is this just a clean version of Windows, or will it try and read a certain BIOS or something, which means it wouldn't install on a non-Opus PC? I don't know, so that's what we're going to find out now. So let's put disk 1 back in. Okay, Let's just dir again. And do I type, I think it's set up. Okay. Program real landboard bar window set up, pressing F1. The setup windows now, press enter. So hit enter. Express setup. I actually might, before we go any further, I might just put a mouse in. If it doesn't see correct mice, is that a problem? So I've just got here, this is an Acer, it's actually a laser, so it's not a ball mouse, but it is PS2. So I don't know if I can just, you can't hot, it's not USB, so you can't just hot swap stuff. So I might take the disc out, and I think we may actually just power down the machine. That's fine to do. And let's just put this in. I don't want it to try and look for things like a serial mouse or something, because there's a lot of ports on this. So let's just... Is that in? Okay. We saw that, but there we go. That's now in. So let's power back up. Okay, so we'll say enter for express setup. I'll be very honest with you, this just looks like a standard Windows 3.1 install. Probably not showing up on camera, but as the disk drive is running, I'm getting a slight wobble in the picture. It's actually waving slightly back and forth, so I don't know if that's just sort of magnetic or RF interference with such a small unit crushed together in size. I don't know, but interesting. So what I'm going to do, oh, please insert, oh there we go. I was about to say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to load this. Let's just put disk 2 in. There we go. Press enter. It's kind of neat, these discs I think are working. He says, it's not a particularly amazing sound. No. There is a problem. Oh no, okay. This was always the work. I thought it didn't sound right. And yeah. Oh dear, okay. The disc itself. Seems fine. I don't know if the drive just needs cleaning or changing, but it seems to be reading okay. So let's just hit F3. It's not a huge disaster, in all honesty. I was originally planning on not trying to use original floppies. It just would have been nice if these would have all worked, but alas, there might be a problem. Okay. What just happened? I'm confused. So I've literally just I've only used the first 2 discs. And my mouse is working, and there is Windows, so please type in your name. Tom Williamson. Wi-Fi sheep. Continue. I don't get too excited, but that's correct. Please insert disk 3. Okay. Notice how we've now gone from a DOS environment to a Windows graphical environment. We're still DOS obviously, but now running in the Windows shell as opposed to the MS-DOS graphical shell. It's installing Paintbrush, that's the important one. Do you know what? There's something about using, love it or hate it, right? There's something about using Windows 3.1 on original hardware with floppy disks and a spinning mechanical hard drive and a fixed 4:3 aspect ratio monitor, 640 by 480 pixel fixed resolution. I think it could do larger resolutions with certain graphics cards, but I'm planning on running it how we ran it at school, which was in this fixed. There we go. So disk 4. I'm planning on running in this fixed low resolution quite impressed it just seems to be working. Almost, it's found the mouse and that seems to be quite happy. It also doesn't seem to care that at the moment doesn't seem to care that this machine is far too new for Windows 3.1. Disk 6. Final disk, everybody. Let's see. I have to say the installation's actually been quite quick. It's not been long. You know, we've spent far longer trying to get stuff building on Raspberry Pis. Okay, so we'll say no printer attached. Hang on. Need to know the application name for MS-DOS editor. Okay. I'm not going to run the tutorial, I'm sorry everybody. And let's take this disk out. And we'll do a reboot. So it says after we stop, type win at the MS-DOS prompt to start Windows. So we'll do a reboot, and I'm going to attach capture card up so you can hopefully see much better than this setup. You'll be able to see this as we go into Windows for the first time. So let's do a reboot. Right, hopefully that should be okay now. So let's go back to capture, power up the machine, and let's see what happens. Okay, there we go. That's something. You generally do not want to see what I'm seeing on my HDMI monitor, because I can assure you it's not that. F1 to continue. Okay, now if we just do a directory, we now have a Windows directory. So can we just call win without going in the directory? I think we might be able to. Yes. That was quick. Blinking, you miss it. We missed the boot screen, but there we are. And there is Windows 3.1 running natively on this machine. So a quick introduction to Windows 3.1. This was, believe it or not, the very first Windows that I actually ever used. So this was my first exposure to PC and Windows, was this very operating system. Bearing in mind I was a Mac user from the age of about 3, so I was coming to this from being a Mac user, and Windows just seemed a little bit strange. So this version, if you came into Windows and PCs at, let's say, Windows 95 era, and you're used to having a start menu, a My Computer, a desktop kind of thing, 3.1, very different. So you have the Program Manager, which is its own window that scrolls around this desktop space. If you minimize it, it creates the Program Manager application that runs here. This, I say desktop, you can't, as far as I'm aware, you can't load files or things into this space. That doesn't work. So you open the Program Manager, and then inside the Program Manager you have a series of sub-window categories or directories, and you then have windows. So for example, here's main, which I can minimize. I can go games, and there's games. But these windows can only go inside the Program Manager window. So you have this slightly strange setup of windows inside windows, and you can then scroll the internal space. There's almost two desktops going on. Sort of an internal Program Manager desktop and an external Windows desktop. There's no X's, minimizer, maximizer here. You then have this little drawer icon that you click, and that's how you close windows, move, size, maximize, switch to. And then, as with other windows that we've become used to, unlike Mac OS and some other OSs that we've seen already that have a fixed menu bar to the top of the screen, Windows was one of those that kind of, I say pioneered the use, perhaps there were others, but it utilised the use of menus per window or per application. So this kind of takes you a little while to get used to. You've got Solitaire, Minesweeper. There's a good old Minesweeper, which, yeah, I've never understood how that works. But in order to close Minesweeper, it's close, draw, close. Let's maximize. And sometimes you find things disappear off the side and you have to sort of use the scroll bars. Accessories. And there's the accessories. Notepad. There's a notepad that we can close. Notice if we close Notepad, it doesn't go or drop into the Program Manager space. It actually drops behind it into the application desktop space. So Notepad as a program is open. We can move these around whilst they're open. And that's Notepad. And Notepad runs as a separate window outside of the Program Manager window. So Program Manager, you need to see it as a sort of separate application or program within Windows. And then most programs run outside of it, but some run inside. It's confusing. And I never really liked this particularly. Let's exit. Clock. And you can set for the classic analog clock. We can maximize the clock. There we go. Minimize. Paintbrush. There we go. And Paintbrush, I have to be honest with you, this was pretty much, other than this and I think Word, the PCs, especially at school, this is pretty much all we ever did was, you know, IT lessons would draw a picture in Paintbrush, you know, which is kind of pathetic when you think about it, but and you see how the applications I've still got running, we're not going to run out of memory on this system. Let's just take a look in, I think it's under main. Also, you'll notice how when the window is open, oops, let's not do that. When the window is open, the application or the icon for it completely disappears until it's minimized or closed. So we have Control Panel. We also have the File Manager. And the file manager is how you actually navigate the system. So you can actually hit the A and you get the error saying there's no disk in A. But if there was a disk in A, if I put HeliSim back in a minute, hit A, I can basically do the same as what I would have done in DOS with the CD command to list or go through directories. I can just click, and there is our exe. So it does actually have some mouse drivers, mouse.com. So if I wanted to, I could copy HeliSim. Also, there's no right click for submenus, so you have to select copy. And it says where do you want to copy to. So let's see if this works. This is where Windows, especially if this area, gets a little bit clunky. So can I copy to clipboard? Does that work? No. We'll go to C. And can I make a new folder? New window, options, tree. Make a new system disk, select drive, copy disk, label disk. Create directory, which should call new folder now. So we go create directory, and we'll call this games, confusingly as well. There we go. So we go to a new directory called games. So it's C games. Back to our A drive on the disk, and can we copy this across then? So copy, and we have to manually type our directory in. That's that way, isn't it? Games. And that's now copying from A drive, the floppy drive, to C drive. We go back to C, and in games, HeliSim. But basically, we now have HeliSim is now on the C drive. So if I now double click HeliSim, and now you can see in a bit more detail what I was saying earlier, that the flickering is absolutely horrendous at the best of times. So we'll quit. And it should be clever enough to quit us straight back to where we were in Windows. So we didn't actually leave our Windows session, it kind of hibernated until we came back. Right, so that was File Manager, which was fun. So let's just have a control panel, which is why I actually came in here. So this is the original control panel, and there's various settings like mouse, track speed, double clicks, but it actually seems alright actually. Mouse trails, I remember doing that at school. It's a strange lag on things. Fonts, colours, well you could set up, if it is on here, hot dog stand, and you go OK, and it creates the absolutely horrendous absolutely horrendous colour schemes. We've also got desktop set up, and we've got the screensavers, flying windows, which I think I certainly remember that one. Starfield, I think a lot of people set that up. That one, it used to have the custom message that I remember a lot of business machines would have run that. I seem to recall our machines having the very distracting, I say our machines, the machines we had at school had that distracting 3D maze, but maybe that was a a slightly later revision or add-on, I'm not sure. Icons, blink, border whips, you can change all that. Let's keep that standard. Wallpapers, Windows logo, tile it, so you go OK. And then you can see we actually now have on our desktop, we've got the Windows logo as opposed to just the plain. So we've still got a paintbrush session open. By the way, it is possible in this version of Windows, and Windows has always done this on and off for so long that it's really confusing. You go to accessories, you can actually start, if I minimize that, you can start multiple paintbrush application. The application just keeps reloading itself. It doesn't load once and then open a file. You load a whole new instance of paintbrush, and so you can have multiple paintbrushes going on at the same time, which for this system isn't really a problem. It's just confusing. But if you're running an older system with less RAM, you can start choking your RAM very quickly. And if this is all hiding here on the desktop and we're in here, we're not necessarily going to realise or remember that we've got multiple instances of the same thing open at the same time. So it was far from perfect, and I actually remember as a child using this, I found Windows particularly clunky, I've got to be honest with you, compared to Mac OS or System 7 point whatever it was at the time, which was a proper 32-bit OS. This is only a 16-bit DOS shell operating system. Yeah, I found it a bit clunky, but it's nostalgic nonetheless, and here it is actually running. We'll end Windows, we'll exit Windows, we'll exit our session, we'll say yep, we're good, thank you. Do you want to save the current? No, not to paintbrush. And straight back to the C prompt, and yeah, and then at that point we would just press the power button and power down our machine. Right, well, I don't know about you, but I've generally enjoyed this one. The DigiPOS retail kiosk computer has behaved itself. We've changed the case over. It's looking a little bit better, and we've managed to install Windows off original 3.5-inch floppy disk. Nearly went into disaster, but it kind of recovered itself. Don't know why, but now it works. So we're kind of halfway there, and yeah, so far I've been really happy, and I've generally enjoyed working on this machine over the weekend. We're going to leave this video here for now, but I've got much more that I need to do to get this up and running and ready for the Retro Festival in Cambridge. Hope you can join me. Once again, a reminder, it's on the 9th and 10th of November 2024 at the Centre for Computer History, Cambridge, England. If you've enjoyed this video and want to help support me and the channel, you can either on Patreon, it's patreon.com/Wi-Fi sheep, or alternatively you can become a YouTube channel member. Details and prices are on screen now. Huge thank you to everyone who has continued to support me both financially and also through the likes and subscriptions to the channel. The brilliant people who go the extra mile and have joined us on Patreon or as YouTube channel members are going to show up on your screen real shortly. Thank you so much to all of them. We're going to be back real soon with part 2, where we're going to continue looking here at the DigiPOS PC. A few extra things I want to do to try and get that machine up to spec, ready for the exhibition. If you're coming down to the show itself, really looking forward to seeing you. But remember, you must pre-book tickets. It's going to be oversubscribed. It's going to be mad, but it's going to be a fantastic weekend. I'm there both days. Really looking forward to seeing you. As I said already, if you haven't done so already, please do consider liking and subscribing. I'll see you in part 2. Until then, thanks so much for your company, and bye for now.